Hello YouTube, it's Lion, and before we do start our videos, I do want to make sure that you guys know that if you like Tentai books, you can use code LION, L-I-O-N, in caps, to get a 10% discount on any purchase on Tentai Books' store, their own website. I'll leave both of these things in the description so you guys know, so do please make sure to check it out, and do enjoy whatever you buy from Tentai. Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we are doing another Kaiju number 8 video. Now, we did not have any chapters this week, which really sucks, but we did have a few cool images, and one of those images did spark a bit of conversation on Reddit. Someone was asking, hey, I thought Kikoru is short. Why does she look so tall on this? And well, I thought it was an issue of perspective. Because it's the first issue in 11.1, or the first picture in 11.1. It's her standing in front of a kaiju, and she looks rather tall. So I thought it was an issue of perspective, and, I said as much in my comment. And, I got thinking, is it really a matter of perspective? How tall is Kikoru, and is there any way to figure it out? And, well, there kind of is, and it's not exact. It's pretty, it's really easy that my height estimate is wrong, but I did figure out a way to kind of find out how tall some of these characters are. And the point was to find out how tall Kikoru was, but along the way, I had to find out how tall other characters were. So we're going to talk about that today. I don't know if this is really interesting to anyone, but, I thought it was fun. It was an interesting little topic to talk about for a video when we don't have anything canon to discuss. I do also have an idea for what I'll do for the next time that we have one of these weeks without a chapter, but hopefully you guys enjoy that, in a month from now. But yeah, so how tall is Kikoru? Well, the height that I found was 5 feet 11 inches, which is rather tall, actually. Average female height is 5 feet 4 inches. Average male height is 5 feet 10 inches, if I remember correctly, worldwide. And I didn't check Japan, but I would assume that it's shorter than that because I am pretty sure the general understanding is that Americans are rather tall. Everyone else is usually shorter, except certain groups of Europeans. So yeah, that's the size that I found, 5'11". Now, how did I go through finding her height? So in chapter 3, when Kikoru finally meets Kafka, and they have a little bit of a disagreement over the car and the parking spot, there's a specific panel where Kikoru is standing right in front of Kafka. She's looking up at him, and she says, "Did you know that you reek of kaiju?" And in that, using that image specifically, I could figure out that her height seems to be the top of her head seems to align with some part of Kafka's face, between his nose and his chin, which is a good estimate point. I would say that the top of her head ends up around here, his lips, which would be a quarter of his face. Yeah, I'm trying to look at my own face in the camera. I do think it's about a quarter of his face. So what we have to do is find, and she's also the similar height to Reno, which Reno is almost the same size. There's another panel in chapter 3 where we see Kafka in front and Reno in the back, like this, I guess. And Kafka's head seems to be, slightly taller than Reno, and Reno seems to be at around the same height level as Kikoru. So we need to find Kafka's height to find Kikoru's height. So how do we find Kafka's height? Well, there's a panel in chapter 1 where Kafka is standing next to Mina, and Mina is a whole head shorter than Kafka, a whole Kafka head shorter than Kafka. So we need Mina's height to find out how tall Kafka is, to find out how tall Kikoru is. So how do we do that? Well, there is an image and a different panel on chapter 1 where we see Mina standing next to her tiger, who we don't know what his name is, if I remember correctly, but her tiger is standing, and they seem to be more or less at the same ground level. So they're both standing at the same level, and they're like, comparatively, we'll be able to see how tall Mina is compared to her tiger. Now, her tiger ends up being shoulder height. Her tiger's shoulder height seems to be at around her hip level, maybe a little bit lower than that. So that's actually ends up being almost half of her body height. If I remember correctly from when I did some art classes back in middle school, if you're doing proportions for humans, you do 7.5 human heads, and the midway mark seems to be your hips. So we can guesstimate here. Now, how tall is an average tiger? Well, an average tiger height ranges from 2.3 feet to 4 feet. Now, if we put it at 2.3 feet, which would be around 2 feet and 2 inches or something like that, and we double that because her tiger ends up being at around her waist, which would be, half of her body, she would only end up being 4 feet 4 inches. 4 feet 6 inches if we assume that she's slightly taller than half, then double her tiger's height. And that's really small. That makes no sense, given that she seems to be rather tall and she's a soldier, and that would also make Kafka rather short. So that's not correct. Now, if you look at the top end of that average, 4 feet tall, she would end up being almost 9 feet tall, and that's also rather ridiculous. So that doesn't work either. We have to find somewhere in the middle that works. I just did an average, which ends up being 2.85 feet, which ends up being 2 feet 10 inches. Now we double that, and it turns out to be 4 feet 20 inches, which is 5 feet 8 inches. So Mina is between 5'6" to 5'9", maybe. I would say in that range. We'll go with 5 feet 8 inches just to keep it, easy to work with. So we found her height. Now, Kafka is a whole Kafka head taller than Mina. Now, how tall is a human head? A human male head, specifically, right? So the average male head from chin to top of the head is apparently 8.5 inches. This actually feels rather big, but, my hand is like 6 inches. And it's slightly smaller than my face, so I guess that kind of works. I'm trying to look if my hand is 6 inches. I don't think so. I think it's slightly longer than that. But, whatever. It's like that old joke, if your hand's bigger than your face, you have cancer. And then all the kids would put their hand in front of their face. You'd smack them. Yeah. God, I was a horrible person. Anyway, so Mina is 5 feet 8 inches. Kafka is 8.5 inches taller than her, based on the fact that the average human head is the average human male head is 8.5 inches. 5 feet 8 inches plus 8.5 inches is 6.4 or 6 feet and around 4 inches. I think it's a little bit more, like 4.5 inches, which is nice. Kafka is 6 feet 4 inches, which I guess would be like 6.3 something, if we're doing in decimals. So 6 feet and 4 inches is Kafka's height. Now we have to go back to chapter 3, where we have that image of Kikoru standing next to Kafka. If Kafka is 6.4 feet tall, and Kikoru ends up being somewhere between his chin and his nose, which would be the bottom, third to the bottom fourth of his face. How tall is Kikoru? Well, she's definitely taller than Mina, because Mina ends up at shoulder height with Kafka. And apparently, the difference between the bottom of your chin and the bottom of your nose is around 2 inches, less than, depending on the person. So, how tall is Kikoru? Well, I guesstimate that she's around 5 feet 11 inches. Like I said at the beginning, this is because we can afford a little bit of height with her neck, with Kafka's neck, and then a little bit of height up to the bottom of his nose, which I would guesstimate is, 3 inches. So Kikoru is 5 feet 11 inches, and that's how tall Kikoru is, and Reno is about the same height. So yeah, there we go. That's how tall Kikoru is. She is rather tall, from my guesstimations here. I mean, there is a certain amount of scientific process here. We are looking at references. We are looking at average heights. Technically speaking, this is a good estimate of how tall Kikoru is, but given that, it's drawings, and the mangaka is not really the most proportional when he draws stuff, right? Because if we look at some images, Kafka looks really skinny. We look at some images, he's rather, chubby. And then when he's in kaiju form, he's definitely different. So there's a bit of inconsistency, and it's not necessarily that the manga is bad at drawing. It's just that if you're drawing, you're not always going to have the same proportions, because that would take too much effort to just measure out stuff every time. So there is some variation, and it's entirely possible that the panel that I'm using to base off, this height experiment for Kikoru is, weird. It might be that Kafka's hunched over. It might be that Kikoru is on her tippy toes looking at Kafka like this, or, whatever the case may be. There could be variations that cause differences. Plus, the mangaka could just go ahead and say, Kafka's 6 feet tall, Kikoru is 5 point, whatever, and then Mina is shorter than that. And it's entirely possible that that's, going to be different. There's also the fact that the image of Mina and Kafka is not necessarily a reliable image, because it's Kafka imagining being next to Mina. So it's entirely possible via unreliable narrator that Kafka imagines himself significantly taller than Mina, when he might not actually be that much taller than her. So there is a bit of variation, a bit of uncertainty to this. I can't calculate it directly, right? Because it's hard to calculate stuff like this. But I would say that there is definitely variation, and the likelihood that she's not actually that tall. But this was a fun experiment. It only took me about 28 minutes to figure out. Mostly because I had to stop and start a lot because I was all over the place. But yeah, cool stuff. I do hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did like this kind of weird thing where I just take a conversation that I found on the Kaiju number 8 subreddit and we discuss it when we don't have chapters, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to do some more of them. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys later.